Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Life podcast. On today's show, I have Nikole Stanfield. Intuition coaching. What does she do? Well, you're going to find out, but she helps people deal with burnout, which is interesting. You know, as an entrepreneur, I think that it's an interesting topic. And I thank Nikole Stanfield for coming on the show, so enjoy it. It was an interesting talk. Hey, Nikole, thanks. And all her social media and such will be on the website if you want to check it out. Of course, if you want to create some digital media, you want to do a podcast or whatever, go to getagripstudios.com. But for right now, Nikole Stanfield on the Get a Grip on Life show. Welcome to the Get a Grip on Life podcast. Nikole Stanfield.
Hello.
So you actually spell your name with a K. Everybody slips the K in there after with the Nikki. Nikki. So is it Nikki or is it Nikole or what is it?
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely not a Nikki.
Okay.
That's a good question. Definitely not a Nikki. But I've had some people, most people just assume it's Nicole, and they just spell it that way, regardless of how my name is spelled. So my mom kind of gave me a hard road there with adding the K into my name, but it makes me unique. I've only met a couple Nicoles that are Nikole, but then when you start looking, you find like Nychole and some crazy spelling. So mine's like right on the cusp.
So, but everyone is a wannabe Nikole with a K because they all put the K, double K in there after they go Nikki. Intuition coaching. So you had a burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me why. I read a little bit about your biography on the internet. I filled out your test, by the way. I don't know if you got it. You saw that.
I did.
Yeah.
I saw that. I haven't had an opportunity to look into your answers, your responses to that, but I can do that. So intuition coaching is all about learning how to listen to yourself. And when I burned out last year, I was at a point where I wasn't living very authentically. And I had my business for 4 years and I was really successful. And I hated what I was doing. I got to a point where I would take like 15 minutes of work and then I would have to take like an hour-long break. And I was bored with it. And then I would get really frustrated with client emails and I'd have to take like 30 minutes to just rage quit and be super angry and be like, I can't believe they're asking this again.
Mm.
And that's not really the person that I wanted to be. My creativity just disappeared. All my ideas, that they just dried up. And I felt really resentful and cynical, and I had lack of confidence. Even after doing it for 4 years and being successful, I was still like, I don't think that this is going to work. And I don't know how much your background is in marketing, but sometimes there's a time when you're just like, nothing's going to work anymore. It's all going down the tubes. So, I got to that point and I was like, actually, my husband was taking a class because he's a teacher and he didn't want to burn out. And he started talking to me about what he was learning. And I realized that I was showing some of the signs of burnout. And I was really scary and I didn't know what to do about it. So I took a week off last year, like literally nothing. I had no responsibilities but feeding myself and sleeping. And by the end of the week, I was like, oh, I should be cured, right? I should be over this. And by the end of the week, I could barely get my stuff together enough to go to the grocery store 5 minutes away and buy more food for myself. And for a high achiever, that's a really low point to be at.
That sounds like clinical depression to me, actually.
Right. So I actually worked with a counselor. And because I was having some mood swings and I was having some things that were showing up for me. And I was like, I don't really know what depression is. What is going on? So I worked with somebody online and I was like, this is what's showing up for me. And I don't want to be in depression. So I need to know if I am so I can get help. And before it gets to that point. And we worked together and he was like, it's more you're a high achiever that just kind of needs to take a break and chill than that you're in depression. Because we were talking about how if you're showing symptoms more than 50% of the week, and I was showing symptoms maybe twice a week, once or twice a week, that I would have low energy days or bad days or crazy mood swings or be super low. So this is a term I made up, like pre-depression symptoms or something like that. but I just kind of wanted to diagnose what was going on and try and figure that out. So I worked with a counselor. I found some different resources on my own, worked with some coaching, tried to pull a lot of different things together. So that's why I ended up creating my own program to help people walk in my steps so that they're not doing it on their own like I was, because I had no idea what I was doing.
I want to ask you some technical questions about your business. So you were the owner of a marketing firm?
Yeah, it wasn't a firm. It was like I was the only person in it. So I don't want to use the word firm, but
sole proprietor.
Yeah, small details. So.
Yeah, okay. So that's not a big deal. But was your business making money?
Yeah.
So you're making
the most money I'd ever made was the year before I burned out, and then I was set to make the same amount last year, and then I burned out.
And you're married?
And that didn't happen.
You have a good husband?
I am married, yeah. Yes. I'm very supportive. Since he's a teacher, he had time off during the summer. So he was really supportive of me, and since burning out, I've learned what some of my triggers are and some of the things that show up for me.
Sure.
And he was super supportive through the whole process when I was I think he called me a grumpy woman. This was my time period of grumpy womanness. And he was like, I just want the person back that I fell in love with.
Yeah, sure.
Except that, but I want to support you.
But you're a new person now that he's still in love with, I guess. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
You can never go back. You can't go back.
No.
Can't go back. So let me ask you another question here. So your business, you're making money in your business. You're making more money. So obviously we know that money doesn't bring happiness. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of times there's a purpose void that money brings that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm an entrepreneur. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I just wrote down some of the things you said here, listening to yourself, authentic, boredom. I know so many entrepreneur friends of ours and from mine, and there'll be friends of yours if you want them to be too. But the number one complaint they have is boredom. That once they've achieved a certain level of success, that it never seems to be enough. They always want more, and it's not necessarily more money. It's almost like money is a detail associated with it. It's an evil necessity. And a lot of people look at entrepreneurs like these greedy entrepreneurs. No, the banksters are greedy. Those are the greedy guys. The banksters, the financiers, the guys that are in a different place. The entrepreneurs that are running legitimate businesses, they're not greedy. They're creating value. You probably did a great job for your clients. I don't know if there was a problem client you had. You probably were doing great work, but you got bored. You stopped listening to yourself. What were you saying to yourself that you weren't hearing, or what message were you telling yourself that you weren't receiving, Nikole?
Oh, that's such a good question. I love it. Perfect phrasing. So I feel like I was on the entrepreneur treadmill. So you start a business and it's new and you're like, yay. And then you want it to work, and you work so hard to get that first client, that first little bit of money. And you're like, oh my gosh, this could actually happen. And so you're like, okay, if I'm an entrepreneur, then that gives me freedom and time to go and do the other things I'm passionate about. For me, it was travel. So I was like, okay, I'm starting to make money here. So I need to commit everything I have to making my business successful. And then when I focused everything I had on it, then I was like, one day I'll be able to go and travel and do those things that I want to do. And what ended up happening was that I sacrificed too much. So then I had no energy. And then I didn't want to go and do events, and I didn't want to go and do things, or I forgot about stuff. But it was all because I was trying to make my business work. So I got into this treadmill of this is what success has to look like. And I wasn't paying attention to the fact that every morning I was drinking something with caffeine. So my chai latte this morning didn't have any caffeine in it. It was decaffeinated. But I was struggling to get out of bed. I would rather be sick than have to go into work sometimes, because being sick meant I got at least some time off. During the weekend, I was so low on energy. I felt almost like I'd been sick and I was recovering. I wasn't sick, but my energy was so low. I was recovering from my work week, because I was doing 12-hour days. I was driving all over the place, having tons of meetings just to make my business work. And it did. And that's awesome. But at the same point, I was sacrificing so much that I thought, this is what success has to look like. Being tired all the time, using caffeine, not taking lunch breaks because a client project was so important.
Mm. You know what's interesting is I think also I think there's something missing from your list, if I may be so bold.
Yeah, share. Please share.
I think entrepreneurs, and this is what I would say about me, and I would say about I'm in a kind of a club of other entrepreneurs, and I think there's an isolation and a loneliness that descends upon you, where you're even like you didn't have any employees, which is even worse. Okay. So even bad interactions or having to be the boss all the time or whatever being the person that's competent, on time, on point all the time, whether it's clients or employees or something, you're always putting on this suit of perfection and this polished image, and you're not allowed to say the F word or whatever, and you have to be perfect, right? That's extremely draining and isolating. So now you're on your own. You're the person who makes the payroll. You're the person that comes through in the clutch. And that's why they hire Nikole Stanfield, because she always comes through for us and she always over delivers. And so there's this in front of the client persona Nikole Stanfield is pretending to be. Okay. But then when she leaves that interaction, there is this emptiness and loneliness and pressure of having to do everything yourself. And so what this does, I believe this is almost a pathology. I'm not a doctor, but I've seen it so many times in my life. And this is what I believe. With every high, there's a low. So you can't have the high if you don't get the low. You can't just have the high, right? So if you're going into that meeting and you're really high and you're like, oh, I just got this client or whatever, you better be prepared because the low is going to come. You're going to have that. There's just no way to not have that cycle.
But the expectation is that we work through that and that we push through and that we can't have the downtime. Like, I know that there's a bit of different cultural points of view, right? I have a friend who's Canadian, like I said earlier. But I know that she also will push herself, even if she's feeling down, even if she's feeling low, to continue to still be productive, get things done, meet a certain goal or quota or whatever it is, even if it's like, I don't really feel like it. I'm tired. I don't have energy. The hardest boss I've ever had has been myself.
Sure.
And everybody thinks that entrepreneurs are sitting around in their pajamas doing whatever the heck they want to during the day. And I really love that you said having to be the boss all the time, because it's true. Part of burnout is not being able to say no to things and having to make decisions about everything. Even like, so when you go to work and you're like, oh, I'm sick, I can call out sick. You can't call out sick from your own business. I wasn't taking sick days. National holidays, I wasn't taking those. I was doing some work, maybe not the full day, but I was still doing work. So it was like, you don't shut off. When is your downtime? When is a time when you don't have to make decisions? And then you get to a point where you're just like, I just gave it all to my business and I have nothing left for myself. So I definitely hear what you're saying about having the high energy and going in and doing that presentation and getting that client and doing that. And then it's almost not okay to have the low, but it's there. It's going to happen. And so it's like, how can we work with that? How can we acknowledge that that's okay and give ourselves permission to have the downtime?
Yeah, I think there's that. I think there's also the elimination of the high. And right. So like that's what I would say for me is that you avoid you can have the stability, but you have to avoid buying into the ego boost of the high. So what happens is you go in, oh my God, it's, corporation X wants to hire me. Then your ego starts to expand. You start to expand, and then it's like you feel so great and you want to go and have dinner and celebrate and pop the champagne cork and pour it out and cheers to everybody. We're the best. We're going to do it. And all of a sudden the next day comes and it's like, oh shit, what am I going to do now? I got to do this. I got to come through. I made all these promises and they're going to pay me, X thousands of dollars, and I really have to come through for them. And how am I going to do it? Oh my God. Right. So that's what salespeople are for.
Sounds like you have some experience with that, Michael.
You know what? I've started 4 businesses, successful businesses. and I'm a podcaster. So I do have I'm very lucky as an entrepreneur. I've been lucky. I've had good people in my life that kind of help me, but I know the pain. I think it's even worse, and I'm going to generalize here, and kick me in the nuts if you want to, but I think it's even harder for women. I think the pressure for women is even. I think a lot of it is fake pressure, like it's made up by themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to look perfect. I have to be dressed this way, and makeup and hair. And yeah, I mean, there's something to getting dressed up and putting your Superman costume on and all that sort of stuff, right? But I think it's a little harder for women to dress. There's more clothes to buy. There's more pressure on women to look a certain way and to behave a certain way. And then especially if you mix children into that, then they have this biological instinct to be a mother, and there's this battle between motherhood and corporate success. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. That's not what I'm here to say. I think motherhood's better, to be honest with you, but I think it's more meaningful in the long run. But but at the same time, that doesn't mean I don't get to tell people what they believe in. You know what I mean? If someone's after their corporate success or entrepreneurial success, and that's what they want, but they're still a human being. And, I think women struggle more with it than men. Would you say that's fair?
I definitely would agree with that. I think it's really interesting that there's this, a lot of paradigms that women sometimes will buy into about needing to be a wife and a mother and an entrepreneur and have all those different hats that they're wearing. But they're not okay with asking for help. They're not okay with saying, where am I on my to-do list? So that's one of the things that I work with my clients on. And it's a shift of being like, when are you taking time for yourself? Where are you on your to-do list?
Totally.
And personally, I know after working with a coach that I got a lot of, it made me feel good when I was useful, right? So I would do things so I could be useful, and I would sacrifice myself. I would sacrifice my lunch or taking breaks or things like that so I could get a client project done or whatever. And then I got that feedback that I was useful. And that wasn't a very positive feedback loop for me. There wasn't anything negative, like it wasn't right or wrong. It was just a pattern and a habit.
It's inauthentic.
Yeah. It's a pattern that I had that was not serving me. And so being able to recognize those things and being like, I didn't put myself on my to-do list, and I don't take time for self-care. Some of the mistakes I see with people, especially with women, is saying, oh, I only do self-care when I'm really stressed, or self-care is selfish, or I don't have time for self-care. And so they only take a bath or do their nails once a month or something like that. And it's like, the shift is self-care is a daily practice.
Totally.
For men, for women.
Totally.
What are you doing for yourself? I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter.
Interesting.
It's just self-care is something you do for yourself. And I actually work with my clients to say, if you can think of 4 activities that you love to do, anything, I don't even care what they are. You don't even have to tell me. One can be sitting on the couch watching television doing nothing, right?
Sure.
That's fine. That's great. And then say throughout your week, where could you spend 15 minutes doing this, 15 to 30 minutes doing this activity? And then if you look at a big picture, you've spent maybe an hour to 2 hours on yourself. And it was a 40-hour work week. And all that time, we can't find an hour for ourselves. So it's just a shift.
You know what's interesting is that you said the word selfish. And it's interesting because I actually started working with an ontological coach about 8 months ago. And so I've never burned out, but I understand what it means to burn out. I can feel the edge there, or whatever it is, right? That edge of where you could go to. I think you use the word self-care. He always talked about, you got to show up for yourself every day. Right? Oh, so you're father of the year. You're the best husband. You're the greatest entrepreneur. You take care of all your clients, eh? Yeah, that's right. Oh, but you're on heart medication and you're 50 pounds overweight. And you can't walk the 3 city blocks without sweating and huffing and puffing. And you eat at your desk every day at work. And you're always on for everybody else except for yourself. So how do you show up for yourself every day? How do you engage in a self-care practice, right? And how do you take that seriously? And it's interesting because I actually think it's selfish not to care for yourself first. I think it's actually the other way around. When you're not
Yeah.
caring for yourself, because I know a guy and whatever, he came up to me and he's like, after I was working with this coach for a couple months and I lost 22 pounds and blah, 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 blah.
That's awesome.
You're looking great. And he's like, what's going on? And what's going on with your life? And I just talking to him. It's just like listening to him. And he was telling me his whole story. Right. And this guy's a little bit overweight. And then all of a sudden it comes out he's also on heart medication. He's 32 years old. Okay. He runs a great business. His business is great, though. His business is an amazing business. Okay. But then, it comes out. And then finally he says, hey, can you give me some advice? And I looked at him and I said, I don't give advice. I'm not an intuition coach. You know what I mean? I'm not getting paid to tell people, what to do. Right. I think that's very important. If someone comes to you and says, help me, help them. But if they don't ask for advice, don't give an unsolicited advice. It's kind of, I don't know.
I'm going to come back to that, but I'm going to let you finish your story.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I looked him in the eyes and just out of my soul from the universe said, you know what? You got to start showing up for yourself every day. Just a line from my coach. And it was like he was hit by a ton of bricks. Right?
Yeah.
He knew exactly what I meant. And we're standing naked in a change room at the gym with towels. We had towels around us, but so I mean, yeah, I think you're right with the self-care. So right about that. How did I win?
So first thing, I just want to talk. I have a little anecdote about advice. My job isn't to give advice. My job is to create an environment where you can experiment and there's no right or wrong answer. And you can say, I've never thought about this, and I get to ask questions, but I believe that you know the answers to your own struggles. I can share my story and I can share what's worked for me, but I can't tell you what to do. So I give feedback. I don't give advice because advice means that I know what's best for you and I don't.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Yeah, Luke Sellers.
Especially as I'm.
Go ahead, you finish.
I was just going to say, especially as I'm younger and a lot of my clients that I'm working with are my age or older, it's important to make sure that I'm not telling them what to do. Go ahead. Tell me about Luke Sellers.
Luke Sellers says that, all he tries to do is help people open their eyes. Because and see what's going on around you. Right. And then once you're able to show up for yourself, do that for a couple months. And then you're able to sort of get to the eye of the storm and things happen around you. And you don't buy into you're not in the storm. You're not whirling around with everything that's going around you. You're able to handle emotions in a basic way. Right. So you don't buy into the ego trip and get high because you know where that ends up.
Yeah.
You know where that ends up. It ends up with the low, right? So,
yeah. So how did you end up showing up for yourself, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. So for it's actually it sounds so simple, but so what are you eating every day? What's your relationship like to food? Right? What's your relationship to food like? Is it do you eat because you're hungry, and you need nutrition, or do you eat because you are satisfying you're eating at your problems, so chocolate or cheeseburgers or whatever it is. The second thing would be do you drink enough water every day? Do you get enough sleep? Okay. Do you exercise on a regular basis? Do you spend time in nature and in sunlight? Okay. Now I'm in the lighting business and I do a lighting podcast. Okay. And the reality is that there's probably going to be a lot of lawsuits coming down the pipeline against sunglasses companies because sunglasses are not good for you. Your eyes need to interact with sunlight. It's very important that your eyes have sunlight going in them, not for 8 hours staring up at the sun, but we're talking no, seriously, humans were outside their entire lives. And yeah, there is glare at times and you want to wear some sunglasses. But the idea that the sun is bad for your eyes is a really bad lie. The sun entering your eyes and hitting the back of your retinal is called circadian entrainment. Okay? So if you don't have sunlight coming into your eyes, you're not properly, your circadian rhythm is not entrained. So that will affect your sleep. That will affect your ability to, and then you're putting your screen in your face all night. So spending time in nature and out, just even at the park, if you live in New York City or whatever, even, walk in the park where there's nature, there's not buildings and radio waves and people and movement, just where there's calm. And so you spend time in nature. And the final thing is implement a a spiritual practice of some kind, and it can be as simple as sitting quietly for 5 minutes, once or twice a day, 5-10 minutes. Sit quietly. And that doesn't mean you have to meditate. You don't have to like try to not move and not breathe a certain way or anything. That can come if you're into meditation or whatever. Yoga is fantastic for people. Praying the rosary is fantastic. There's all sorts of different ways that our ancestors have dealt with this, and every culture has it. You can look at Hindu culture, Christian culture, Hawaiian culture, all sorts of cultures have these practices. Watching the sunset. Like these are things, it's so beautiful to watch the sunset. Then why don't you do it more? Right?
Yeah.
Because it makes you feel so good when you watch the sunset or watch it rise, or these interactions with nature. And there's also something to the color of light at sunrise and sunset that entrains your circadian rhythm even further. So these things are real. So implementing a wellness practice that involves those things. The other thing is a lot of people, if you go to a gym and you see people exercising, a lot of people are engaging in a form of self-torture that's not healthy. No, seriously.
I love how you phrase that.
No, it's like a form of like, I'm going to punish myself because last night I drank a bottle of wine and I ate, too much at dinner. And now I got to go to the gym and I have to abuse my body again.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't have any respect for myself.
Yeah. And you see people like it. And you know what, again, I'm going to say, the whole spiritual world is very, very underestimated and people are they don't realize it, but they're dying from a thirst for spirituality in their lives. And I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic, and that's my faith. And, I'm not proselytizing to anybody, but people need some way to express their spirituality. And that can be through yoga. Kundalini yoga is fantastic. Meditation, whatever it is for you, you have to engage. You're a spiritual being. You have to engage that. And if you don't do that, you're really missing at least 50% of your life because, you're ignoring. When you said listening to yourself, it's so true. Meditation is about listening. That's what it is. It's listening to the voice of God or your inner voice or the universe, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is you want to call it. That's what meditation is. And prayer is simply gratefulness for what is, Nikole.
I think it's really interesting that you brought up meditation because it's my number one tip to help people get out of burnout. That if they feel like they're in some of those places like I was talking about in the beginning, they feel like they're in that area in their lives, that meditation, I read a book that said meditation, try mindfulness meditation. And the really cool part is that if you're already overwhelmed with burnout in your job and all of that in your business and stuff, then it's super small. You can do 5 minutes a day. And I was very judgmental towards it when I first heard about it. And I was like, I'm not going to do this. This sounds stupid and like for hippies, and I'm not hippie, and how do I do it? And do I have to sit there and chant something and all that stuff, right?
Sure.
But I read this thing that this woman was like, I almost didn't make it out of burnout because I was judgmental towards meditation. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to give it a try. And at first it was like, this is kind of different, but I experienced some like relaxation after. I was like, okay, but I kept doing it and I kept doing it. And I don't know where I'd be without meditation. It's amazing. And mine isn't necessarily connecting with spirituality, which is fine. That's my interpretation of it. But my experience of it is being able to listen to myself better. And it's kind of like being in the Matrix, where before I'd have to step in and be hit by the bullets. Now I get to like dodge them. And it'll be with my family. It'll be with my clients. It'll be with my husband other times. And we all have instances when we don't want to go do something, or it's a social engagement or whatever. Like I meditated before I got on today with this conversation. And my goal was to be present, to be able to have a conversation with you and to be able to give value to building this relationship during your podcast. So that was my intention.
I did
and
the
I
same.
think that we've done a good job. Yeah.
I did the same.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
We can both be present
I
here.
thought about you. I read your thing, and I went to another thing that I think a lot of people don't understand well is prayer. I think there's a big difference between meditation and prayer, and another way to put prayer, because I don't want to pray, man. I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. Or okay, whatever. What? Okay, you don't like the word. So there's a famous Chinese poet named Lao Tzu. Okay. And this has really occurred to me since I started this show. And the first line or second line or third line of his poem is, the name that can be named is not the eternal name. Right? So we're all these naked apes. We're grunting about things. You call it listening to the self, your own self. I call it God. He calls it the universe, the tiny space of the heart. Whatever it is, we're all talking about exactly the same thing. Right? It's a space where where you're really where you can be authentically yourself and deal with different emotions. And it's people think it's all quiet, but it's actually very active for me. I spend a lot of time in there, not thinking, I guess, but feeling maybe is a better word. But prayer is very important. Mm-hmm. And I think you can put another name for prayer, if people don't like that word, is gratefulness practice. Okay.
Absolutely. That helps shift the cynical portion of burnout. So there's 3 parts of burnout: feeling low energy, having a lack of confidence, and not having meaning in your work. So feeling cynical. And gratefulness will shift you out of that cynicism. I was very cynical when I burned out and was just like, well, none of this is going to work. Nobody cares.
I can see it on your face, actually. Yeah, you can even imitate yourself being in that mode. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then having the lack of confidence and like no ideas and no solutions for anything, and people coming up with problems and just being like, I don't care. I have nothing left to care about. And that was a terrifying place to be, because I've definitely never felt that way before. So shifting out of how can I take care of myself so then I can give to other people. And the energy is, I believe that the meditation helps shift that portion. So then I can become more self-aware as well. So you were saying it helps you experience emotions, but it also helped become more self-aware. I'm having this experience. This is going on for me. Oh, I'm being grumpy again. Okay. I probably overdid it. I tried to do too many things. I tried to do my work for my business and my clients, and do my marketing, and clean the house, and do dinner, and do the laundry. And then the next day I'm really grumpy and be like, there's probably a reason why. I probably did too much. So those are some of my ways of identifying when I'm overdoing it, when I need to take a break, when I need to love on myself instead of continuing to push forward, which is what I used to do.
And the name that can be named is not the eternal name. So I have different names for all that stuff you're talking about. I know exactly what you mean, though. It's interesting because, so whether you call it a gratefulness practice, so prayer is just gratefulness for what is. And whether it's a higher power you're giving gratefulness to, or the universe, or to the people that you love and the things that you love. I mean, it's so important to be grateful. And if you cultivate that every day, if you say, okay, every day I'm going to write it down. That's a good way to do it. Or before I meditate, I'm going to say 7 to 10 things that I'm grateful for. And then you go into meditation after that. Now you're setting the stage for it. So prayer and meditation, or gratefulness practice with quiet time, or whatever whatever anybody wants to call it, super important every day. And the key is to do it every day. That's what's show up for yourself every day, and you gain momentum. You gain spiritual momentum. You gain momentum in business. You gain momentum as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a son, a daughter, brother, sister. You actually become better at that. More, you don't need to solve every problem. You realize that some problems are just problems.
Yeah, it helps you shift out of, I need to be the savior. I need to be the one that's making everything work. I need to hold it all together and be like, actually, nope, I'm going to give the power back to you. I believe in you, that you can make it work. I believe that you can show up for yourself and figure that out. And that's been really big in shifting some emotions and some relationships that I have personally, so that I would have a relationship long-term instead of being like, I can't handle you right now.
Yeah.
And so then I got to work on myself. A lot of times it's more a mirror of your own issues
Yeah. It's called
that you have with someone else.
mirroring. Projection is another word for that.
Yeah.
You're projecting on your partner, your husband, your wife, whoever, or the people you love. You're projecting this negativity on them, and it's changing the dynamic of the relationship. Listen, people talk about vibes. Totally agree with vibrations or spiritual elements, whatever anyone wants to call it. You're expressing those, right? And if you're expressing the lows of your high out into your world, who wants to make love to that? I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I feel like you have to, and that's part of that living authentically.
Yeah.
Part of me shifting was realizing that maybe I communicated in a different way, that maybe I'd been stuck in fear, and that I wasn't okay with people not liking me. I need to be liked by everybody. And shifting out of that was like, nope, it's okay if some people don't like me. I have a big personality and I'm going to allow it to come out instead of holding it in and saying, what should I say in this circumstance? What should I say over here? And I was very good at that, and having different masks, facades, faces, whatever you want to call it. But it was exhausting, and it wasn't me.
Manipulation.
It was rarely me.
Manipulation is exhausting. When you're manipulating others?
Yeah, even innocent or manipulating myself.
Yeah.
It wasn't intentionally malicious. It was being friendly. It was being nice to everyone.
But what's interesting about saying not everyone has to like you. When you actually adopt that, more people like you. Usually.
I find that it gave me freedom.
Freedom. Let me ask you this. What about saying what you think? Like, what about like just incorporating frank? No, I mean, honesty is like a dangerous word. It's like a bomb people put on the table. Do you want me to be honest with you? No, don't put any bombs on the table. Okay, I don't need a grenade right now. Like, it's such a loaded word. But I think if people were to be authentic with one another and speak the truth rather than be honest, that's not the right word. I don't want you to tell me everything. But if you were to say, there's a grenade of honesty, and I got the pin out too now, but how about we just say, like, why don't you just be authentic and speak your truth? And
it's very powerful. I think the most powerful conversations I've ever had with my husband were very me speaking my truth and where I was at. But I know that our relationship got better and stronger because of that, and that communication is what helped us shift into being closer and to having a stronger relationship and being like, I understand you. For example, this past weekend was Easter, and our families live somewhat close together, and mine's a little farther away than his. We went and spent time with his family, and we'd had conversations in the past that in order to do his job and be a teacher on Monday, he needs to have downtime. And that can look like whatever, but it's just no adulting tasks, nothing useful. And so that meant that he needed that time instead of going up to my family's Easter celebration, that he got to go back home and didn't have to do the travel and the time and all that. We both love each other's families, and that's a huge gift that we have. But we realized that it needed to look different for him. And I could have been jealous, and I could have been frustrated, and I could have been upset that he came home and played video games, because that's what he did. But instead, we'd had the communication enough times, and he was able to say, time is very important to me. Money isn't as important to him. It's time. So he could say, I need this time. And I could say and tell my family, it's going to be best for him if he has that time.
Sure.
So then he can go and have a really great day. And he did have a great day yesterday. He had just come back from break, and he needed that time before he went to school. And so it was better for him. And then we were better. And I was able to release that and not have those hurt feelings because he didn't spend time with my family on Easter.
Yeah.
So that communication levels, it's hard to get to, but it's really important.
Marriages can have burnout too.
Absolutely. We can burn out from holidays. We can burn out from the end of finals. I mean, I know, but it's like okay, I need a couple days to rest, or I'm glad that family member's gone, type of thing. You need a break, right? And you recover and you're like, okay, cool, I can go back and do it next semester, whatever. The level of burnout that I want to help people not get to is almost like a shutdown burnout of almost like, I don't know what to do. I don't care anymore. If there's some depression in there, like you mentioned earlier, I can't help with that. And so then I refer them to someone who's a counselor that can, if they want to. But it's like right on the cusp of that, of just being like, I have nothing left to give. I don't have anything. So it's not a quick, here's the answer, here's the quick fix. But it's pulling it all together and working over a period of time to build small habits, and then to find balance between your personal and professional life, and then prioritizing yourself. And that's what I help my clients do.
So it's interesting that people need this so much. And it's you go. You're ready to rock.
But it's funny because they're so scared of it. They're so scared of burnout. They're terrified to burn out. Nobody wants to admit they're in burnout. Whether they're a teacher and everybody's like, you could burn out, but they're like, oh no, I'm not burned out. They're showing the signs, but they're no. I went to an event and I was doing a networking group and I was like, I'm a coach. I help entrepreneurs work through burnout with my Love What You Do formula. And 3 people after me were like, I love my job and I'm not in burnout. And they didn't have to say anything about me, but that was the immediate response that they had, because they were just so scared of admitting that maybe they could be burned out.
It's like people that don't want to go to the doctor when they're sick. You ever meet someone like that?
Yeah.
Someone's like, "Oh, you're sick, dude. You've been sick for a week. You've seen a doctor?" "Oh, no, I don't go to that doctor. I'm good. No, I'm good. I'm just gonna get better." And you're like, another week, like, "Dude, you're sick, man. Go to the doctor. Go see the doctor. That's what they're there for. In Canada, it's free. Go." What are you waiting for? Right? And it's like, it's almost like, I don't know what it is. There's I don't know what it is with people with some things like that, where it's like, if I admit weakness, or if I admit that I'm human, maybe it's a better way to put it. If I admit that I have limitations, then what happens after that? Well, that's the beauty of life. You admit that you have limitations, and then you go ahead and you dive into those, and some of them are good. There's reasons why we have limits. We need limits. We have a 48-hour rule. It's a good rule. We won't spend any more than 48 hours, my wife and I have 4 children. So whenever we're traveling or we're going to go on a vacation with someone outside of our immediate family, we won't spend more than 48 hours in close quarters with anyone else.
That's a good rule.
48 hours.
That's a good rule.
Everything seems to break down at the second night, after the second night. That's when the other husband and wife get into a fight because it's their turn to do the dishes, or their kid does something crazy and it turns into a crazy making time, or one kid steals the other kid's toy and the parent gets it. Everything's after the second night. Everything happens. So it's good to be like, oh, we're packing up now. It's time to go. Yeah. Oh, I'd love it if you'd stay. I'd love it if you'd stay longer. I know, so would I, but gotta go. Why? Well, really, it's because of the 48-hour rule, but I'm not going to tell you that. So yeah, it's very important to have those limits and boundaries, I think. And the story you told about your husband is very pertinent, because sometimes people at these holidays are very stressed out, right? They're trying to prepare a big dinner for people. The other people are tired. Maybe they're on their 3rd drop-in party in 3 days, and they're wearing, they're worn out with, hey, how's it going with the Joneses? What are you up to? What school are you going to, Tommy? That kind of, event-based polite conversation that can be extremely draining and tiring at times, right? It's interesting. Wow.
And I think that we don't give ourselves permission to say, I've had enough. I don't want to go. I don't have energy to go. And I used to feel guilty about saying that, about saying no, especially to family events. How can you say no to someone's birthday party? All this stuff, right? But I learned a concept that if it's not good for you, it's not good for them. So if you don't want to go, but you feel obligated to, or like you have to, you're going to bring a resentful attitude, and it will color everyone's experience. So if it's not good for you, it's not good for them, and you don't have to fall on the sword.
Yeah, that's so right. I think the word no is something that people could add to their vocabulary. No.
Yeah.
What do you mean
And
no?
then it's
How
okay
dare
to
you?
say it.
How dare you? Well, I just, I'm not. What are you doing instead? Don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
No.
No is a complete sentence. I don't have to
Yeah.
say anything else.
I'm a fully formed adult. I have my own house. I'm going to stay there.
Exactly, but sometimes we just don't give ourselves permission to be like, "I've had enough. I don't have energy," and that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Wow. That's 45 minutes right there, Nikole Stanfield.
It was a good conversation.
I
I had
think
a
it
great
was.
time.
Me too. Tell everybody your website.
So my website is myintuitioncoach.com. And if you want to take a short quiz like Mike did about to see if you might be in burnout or if it might be showing up for you, it's myintuitioncoach.com/burnout quiz.
And it's not a long quiz because I hate long quizzes. I wouldn't have been able to get through it. I wouldn't have been able
It's
to
like
get through
5
it.
minutes.
Yeah, it takes 5 minutes, and it's actually
Awesome.
interesting to ask yourself. And it's that you could probably use that quiz as kind of like a weekly check on where your head's at too. It's if I remember it correctly.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good way to just identify what's going on for you.
What social media are you on?
So I am on Facebook at
Mhm.
My Intuition Coach and then Instagram with the same handle, My Intuition Coach. LinkedIn is a great way to engage with me. That's at my personal profile. Uh, that's where I'll post things and share stuff that I'm working on, radio interviews or blog posts. So if you're looking to figure out kind of what I'm working on and what's coming up next, then those are my top couple places to look.
One more question for you. Is
Yeah.
this a movement? It's like a spiritual movement happening in the West right now. Like that people are really starting to gravitate towards this kind of stuff everywhere. I don't know what the right word is, but
Yeah, I just saw a Time magazine special issue about mindfulness, and they were talking
mindfulness.
about
That's what it is.
all these things that I'm talking about,
Mhm.
and about not being in burnout and saying no, and choosing not to fill up your entire weekend with stuff to do and all these things. And I want to shift people from saying, "Oh, I'm so burnt out, I'm so exhausted, I'm so tired," to saying, "Oh my gosh, this is how I took care of myself. This is
Hmm.
what I did for myself. This is my self care." And not feeling ashamed for taking time for yourself.
Yeah, I'm a dude. I meditate. I pray. Um, I
Awesome.
spend time in nature every day, and I have the sun go in my eyes. And I'm not ashamed to say that. All you men out there, get after it, man. There's nothing wrong. This is beautiful. This is the beautiful place. So, and that on that note, I think we'll close it off. There's one more thing I had in my head, though. What was it? Oh, come on, Nikole Stanfield. I lost it. Oh well. Thank
No
you for
worries.
Thank you for being a guest on the Get a Grip on Life podcast.
Thank you for having me, Michael. It was great to chat with you.
Get a Grip Studios, folks. Go to getagripstudios.com. Check it out if you want to create some digital media. If you want to create your own podcast, check us out. We have a studio here in Toronto or around the world with a fast internet connection. Yeah, that's right. You can do it. Just some thoughts on burnout and that, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people in the world they're not willing to acknowledge that everybody has limits, that there's only so much work you can do. There's only so much pressure. And I think in our society, a lot of our productivity gains have come at the expense of people's personal time, which is why in my own business, I'm adamant on a Monday to Friday. No work after 5 and no work on weekends. And there's certain situations where we change that, but we offset that with other time off. And I think it's important. There's a reason why the work week is 40 hours. And as a professional, you got to act like a professional, and a professional knows his energy level. A good example of that is professional athletes. You'll see guys that really play better in the playoffs than they do in the regular season. It's almost like there's like this switch. There's playoff kind of players, and then there's regular season players. And then there's guys that transition and gals that transition between the two things, big game players and stuff like that. There's a professionalism that it takes to work in the world as an entrepreneur, as a professional, as a sole proprietor, as a corporate person. Someone that can bring, not you say, I'll bring 110% every day. Yeah, don't do that, because you're taking 10% out of the future. So if you say I'm bringing 110% every day, you're going to pay for that. Why don't you bring 85 every day? Save something for down the road. Learn how to do your job faster. Become more efficient in your own world. Don't let people push productivity on you by making you work all the time. You know, it's a difficult thing, but when you say be a professional, what does that mean? That means know when to shut it down. That means knowing when to stop. That means knowing when to rest. That means as my mentor, my spiritual guide, as we call him, Luke Sellers, would say, show up for yourself every day. And showing up for yourself means not scraping the bottom of the energy barrel every single day and exhausting yourself. Because you know what? It comes at the expense of someone else, usually family. And so if you're giving 110% at work, you can't possibly give 85 at home to your friends, your family, and your faith. You've got to have balance in your life for the long run. It's a marathon. It ain't a sprint. And if you treat every day like it's a sprint, you're going to burn out. And that's when you're going to need someone like Nikole Stanfield from Intuition Coaching, because you need to learn how to introduce balance into your life. You need to learn how to show up for yourself every single day. And if you do that, if you show up for yourself every day, that means that you know what's the appropriate amount to give to this corporation of myself for the money I'm being paid. What's the appropriate amount? How much do I have to give? And if people are asking more from that, more than what's the appropriate amount, you need to go look for another job. Do everybody a favor. Do yourself a favor. First of all, show up for yourself. But do the people around you a favor and, send a message that, you know what? I'm not willing to give everything to this. I'm not willing to, slave away and sacrifice my personal life and my joy and my happiness and my family for a corporation. Or maybe you are. That's okay too. But what I'm here to tell you is that a professional knows his limits or knows her limits. And they know when enough's enough. And they know that the evil of the day is sufficient thereof. So folks, thanks for listening to Get a Grip on Life podcast. Thank you to Nikole Stanfield. And you, the listener out there, if you like me, if you don't like me, tell me. Post it on Facebook or anywhere this is the Twitter, Instagram, on the website, on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, check it. Put a little comment in there if you don't like what I'm talking about. But hey, take it easy, man. Be a professional. Know your limits. Thanks for listening.